Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Chris, and in this video I am going to be doing some Easter decor with Easter bunnies and eggs. So with all that being said, let's begin with DIY number 1. In this project I have some of these, I guess you can call them mid-size spools, and I picked these up at Amazon. I will link these in my description box. And I am going to take 6 of these. And then I'm going to take my color Truffle from Waverly chalk paint, and I'm going to mix that in a little bowl and add some water just to dilute it some. And then once I get that mixture all mixed up, I am just going to add these spools into that mixture and just stir them around. I just thought this would be an easier way to coat them. Once I pull them out, I am going to take a cloth and I am going to wipe back any of the excess. And here's Cammie poking her head. She just wanted some loving. Everybody say hi to Cammie. I have got this wood block here, and my friend Kendra from Late Night Creations had sent me some wood pieces, so thank you, Kendra. And I went ahead and stained this in the same mixture. I did go ahead and add a little bit of black to my mixture. I just thought on this wood, being the color it was going to make it too yellow, so that black definitely helps to darken it up a little bit. But I did go ahead and sand it first. And then I've got these little Easter eggs I had found at Hobby Lobby, and I am going to be taking 6 of these Easter eggs, 6 colors of paint, which I will link in my description box, the colors I used. And I am going to go ahead and paint each color on each egg. I do use my heat gun to dry these down. Just be careful because these are plastic, and if they get too hot, they could start melting. So definitely low setting and keep it moving. Once I get all the eggs covered, I'm going to take some Big Top. You can take any kind of sealer, and I'm just going to go ahead and coat these with that sealer. While that sealer is drying on my eggs, I am going to go back to my wood piece, and I am going to take my vintage linen, and I am going to just do a dry brush over it, just to give it a little bit more of an aged look. And I like to do this on my project, especially on the wood. I don't know, to me it just gives character. But if you don't like the distressing and you want just a solid color, then leave it that color. If you don't want it stained, paint it white. Paint it blue, paint it purple. You do you. Next, I'm just going to take some white wax, and I'm going to go over all of the eggs with that white wax. I'm going to wipe back any of the excess. Sometimes I get just the right amount on my brush, and I can just brush it on and leave it. I just want to dull down those eggs just a little bit, giving it a little bit more of a pastelish type of coloring. It'll also help take away a little bit of that sheen that the Big Top I use does tend to give. Next, it's time to pull out the hot glue gun, and I would like to take this moment to thank my friend Joanna from Joanna's DIY Life for sending me this glue gun. Joanna happened to be watching one of my videos and saw how much I despise my old hot glue gun. It leaked everywhere. I was always fighting it, and she took it upon herself to send me this glue gun. And I'm going to put her link in my description box. If you guys aren't following Joanna, go check her out. See if it's something you would like. She does sewing on Saturdays, so she can teach you the ins and outs of sewing, which is something I know nothing about. So I tend to watch her episodes so she can teach me something. But Joanna, if you are watching this, thank you so much. This was very sweet of you. Thank you. Okay, so the next step is I'm going to take my hot glue and just apply some to the top of my spools, and I'm going to go ahead and adhere an egg to each of the spools. And when you're putting the hot glue down, just remember these are plastic. So if that hot glue is way too hot, it could melt that plastic some. So just be careful and cautious. If you would rather not use hot glue, I think that the Eileen's tacky glue would be a good option. And once all that glue has set up, I'm going to go ahead and grab our long block here. And I'm just going to get an idea of how I want these to be displayed. And I am going to want them to go all the way across. And I like to do this just to prepare myself. That way I know which colors I want where. But I'm going to grab my Apothecary label stamps, and I am going to grab out these letters right here, and I'm going to go ahead and spell out Easter, putting each of the letters on each of these eggs. Now I will tell you, this was a little tricky because the eggs are a rounded surface, and yeah, so it's not perfect, but you guys get the gist. And you can even take some stickers and put some stickers on here. I just didn't have small enough stickers. I was going to use stickers, and I was going to do 2 different color paints and to bring out that sticker. If you got stencils this small, use the stencils. And anytime you're using stamps, you want to make sure that you take a baby wipe or a wet rag and you want to wipe off that ink, because we definitely want to keep these as good as new. And depending on what kind of ink you're using, you may have to seal this. I am using IOD's ink, so it does not require any kind of sealer. They are a permanent ink, and so I won't have to seal those afterwards. And once my ink has dried, I'm going to take some Spanish moss. I'm going to cut it up a little bit just to give me some smaller pieces. And then I'm just going to take some hot glue, and I'm going to run it around where the egg meets the spool. And then I'm just going to take some of that Spanish moss and shove onto that glue. And once I get that on there, if I need to trim it up any, that's what I'm going to do. Once I get that Spanish moss on all my eggs, I am just going to hot glue these down onto the top of my wood block. And I am going to have a photo of each project at the end of each project. And then at the very end, I'm going to have a total way of how I staged it. So make sure you stay tuned to that. And once I get all of those glued, I am going to pull back out my stamps. And I just thought the front of the block needed something, so I found this little piece in there, and I thought just a little decorative something to add. Now I know it's black ink on brown, and it doesn't really show very vibrantly, but that's okay. It just gave it a little bit of character, and I'm good with it, but you guys can do whatever. Now that I'm thinking about it, I should have added some of those little wood carrots that you can find at, I believe, the Dollar Tree. I know I've seen them at Hobby Lobby, but those on the front would have been really pretty. And once I get that done, this project will be complete. DIY number 2. All right, so I've got some spools that are a little larger than the last ones we used. These came in a set, so like I said earlier, I will link these in the description box. But I'm going to take that same mixture that we did with the truffle and water, and I am going to stain these spools as well, wiping back any of the excess. And I've got some of these little carrots that I have gotten from the Dollar Tree, and I am going to pull out the little green piece, and I'm going to take some jute twine, and I'm just going to kind of wrap it around the carrot with quite a bit of space in between each wrap. And the main reason I'm doing this is, well, carrots to me have a little bit of brown in them, and also to fill in some of the gaps that you can see the styrofoam. And also I think it just gave it a little bit of character. And I'll use some hot glue to secure that twine in place. Now this one right here was a little broke, so I just kind of put some hot glue right there where it was broke just to secure it back in place. And once I get that twine on both of them, I have these little skewer sticks that have been broken in the past and just in my scrap pile, but I'm going to take one of those and shove up through the bottom of the carrots. And then I've got some greenery, and I decided I'm going to use this boxwood greenery that you can get from Walmart. So I'm just going to pull some picks off, but I always save like these leftover scrap pieces of greenery after I've used the flowers. That way I've got those stems, and I like to use those for that extra support with the greenery. That makes sense, but I'll just put the little piece of greenery on the tip of it. That way I've got a nice stiff stem where I can stick it in through the styrofoam. See right here. And I kind of use my poker tool just to kind of help me maybe make a little bit of a fresh hole. All right, and I wanted these skewer sticks on there just to give me a little bit more support for the carrot, I guess. Honestly, I don't know. You may be able to skip this. I don't know. It just made sense. But anyway, I'm going to glue those in place. And then I'm going to grab some Spanish moss, and I'm going to do the same thing like we did on the eggs. And I'm going to put some Spanish moss around the bottom of the carrot where it meets the spool, trim it up as needed. Next, I'm going to grab my vintage linen, and I felt like the spools just needed a little something, so I'm just going to dry brush that color on there. And once I do this, this project will be complete. DIY number 3. All right, so this next project is going to start with one of these wood pieces. I picked this up from the Dollar Tree. I don't normally pick up wood like this at the Dollar Tree because I know I can get it cheaper at the hardware if I just buy a whole board and cut it up. But I was at the Dollar Tree, saw it, and I thought, well, I want to make a rabbit anyway. And well, here we go. But this is one of their 5.5 by 7.5 pieces of wood. So that's what our project is going to start with. Now, I did see this project on Pinterest. I actually saw somebody selling some of these bunnies, and I thought that is so cute. I have got to replicate that. So that's what I'm going to do. And I also have one of these little wooden drawer knobs. I had got this from the thrift store. I actually got a whole bag of different knobs at the thrift store for a couple dollars. So score me. And then we're going to need some muslin fabric. My muslin fabric is like an off-white color. It looks stained, so that's perfect. My 2 pieces measure 13.5 by 9. So like I said, we're going to use one of these for each ear. I'm not very good at ears. I've only made one set of bunny ears, and that was on my bed spring bunny with a baseball head. I will link that up here in the top if you've not seen it. I know a lot of people haven't seen it. I guess people don't think bed spring really, but hey, go check it out because it's cute. It's really cute. So I've also got some 18 gauge flexible wire. And when I was folding the wire up, I noticed, hey, that looks like a bunny ear. Look at that. It already looks like a bunny ear. So just take your bendable wire, fold it, shape it into your ear. Make sure your tail is long enough. And I'm just trying to see how big I want this ear on my, I think I'm gonna want it probably about like that. And I'd like some wide ears. So maybe about like so. And then I finally did get me a fabric marker. And then I'm just going to trace around that wire, coming out of roughly a 1/2 inch away from that wire. And then I'm just going to take that fabric and fold it in half. And the best thing to do is to pin that fabric down, but I didn't do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut out the image that I traced. And then I'm just going to use the first one that we cut out as a template, and I'm just going to trace it onto the other piece of fabric and repeat the process. All right, next I'm going to go ahead and get this piece of wood prepped. I'm going to first remove the tag on the back. I'm going to go ahead and grab my 120 grit sandpaper. I'm going to sand that wood down. Once I get that completely sanded, I am then going to take my 240 grit sandpaper and I am going to go over that. And this is just going to give us a smoother surface. And once I got all that sanded, I'm going to wipe away that dust. And then I'm going to grab my vintage linen and I'm just going to take a chippy brush and I am just going to do a dry brush on top of this piece of wood. I thought about staining it, but I thought, you know, I like little white bunnies, so I'm just going to make this one white, but you do whatever color you'd like. And I'm just going to dry that down with my heat gun. All right, so I'm going to go back to my bunny ears and I am going to take my hot glue and go around the edge and pressing the 2 pieces together. And I'm not a big fan of using hot glue on fabric because it gets lumpy, but I try to press that down as quickly as I can, real firmly, just to get as much of that raised glue flattened out as I possibly can. And when you go all the way around and when you get to the bottom, just make sure you leave enough at the bottom because you're going to want to flip this right side out. And if that's too narrow, it'll make it very difficult to do. And then also depending on what kind of fabric, if you're using a really thick fabric, then you're going to want to have as large enough opening as possible. Trust me, I know. But this fabric I'm using is pretty thin, so it's very easy to churn. And to be honest with you, I probably could have gone down a little bit further, but better safe than sorry. And then you're just going to repeat this process for the other ear as well. And I'm going to go ahead and take my little mini heat press and I'm going to iron some of the wrinkles out of that fabric. And then I have got this stamp set from IOD. It's from their spring 2025 collection. I believe it's called Bird and Song or Song and Bird. And I decided I want to go ahead and stamp these beautiful flowers onto my ears. And I'm just going to figure out which section I want to stamp onto the ears. And I'm just going to use a black ink. I'm just going to line that up and press it down firmly. And when you're inking up the stamp for fabric, you just want to make sure you have it nice and covered. And I'm just going to kind of tickle my fingers over that. And would you look at that? It is beautiful. And I'm just going to repeat this process for the second one. And once that ink is dried down, I am going to take a piece of parchment paper and I am going to iron over our stamp, and that is going to heat set it and make that permanent. And I didn't record that part, but there's your explanation. And then I'm just going to take that wire. Okay, so I'm going to make sure I've got the shape and how large I need it. I'm going to trim off the bottom, and you definitely want to leave some because we're going to have to use that as an anchor. We're going to take one of the end pieces and twist it around the other piece. Then I'm just going to go ahead and take that and push that up into my fabric, spreading it out, making sure it's going along the edges of the inside of that ear. All right, then I'm just going to take my hot glue gun and we're going to go ahead and finish gluing down to the bottom of the ear. And then once we get those sides glued, I'm just going to grab each side and just kind of cinch it together and then glue that in place. And we'll repeat the process for both ears. Next, I'm going to grab my little knob. I did go ahead and put a primer on it already. And then I'm going to take the color Cottage Rose from Folkart Matte. And I'm just going to go ahead and apply 2 to 3 coats. Now it's time to pull out the drill. And I need 2 holes on the top. And I just use my little poker tool just to mark where I want to drill. And once I figure that out, I'll grab me the proper size drill bit. And I believe I ended up using a 1/8 of an inch drill bit, I believe. The hole I'm drilling right there, that one worked good. And well, I didn't pay attention to my centering. So I did have to drill another hole because those ended up being just a little too off center. But you're going to need the hole to be deep enough to put that wire through. And I do find that I have to trim the wire quite a bit because I left way too much. But I'd rather, I mean, you can take away, but you can't add. So, and right there is about when I realized my holes are just a little too close together. So I end up having to drill a 3rd hole. But that's okay. My bow's going to cover it anyway. And I guess the hardest part of this was just getting the right depth because I want to put that wire in that hole and I want it to where the fabric I can kind of tuck in there as well. All right, once I'm satisfied that this is going to go in there no problem, I am just going to use some Star Bond glue and squirt that in the hole. And I'm going to go ahead and put that rabbit ear in there. And then I'm going to take my poker tool and just kind of pushing that fabric into the hole with my poker tool. And then I'm just going to let that dry and set up. All right, after we got those ears stuck in there, I went ahead and just drew me some eyes on some cardstock because I don't trust myself to draw directly onto the wood piece. So I am going to use those as templates. And I just made a little temporary bow to put on top of her head just so I can get a better visual of her face. And then I am just going to measure, make sure I've got my little nose, my little knob piece centered. And then I am just going to mark center with my pencil where where I am going to be drilling a hole for the knob. And then I'm just going to go ahead and take my drill bit. And I believe this is where I use the 1/8 of an inch drill bit, I think. And of course, I'm going to grab me a little piece of wood to put under my piece I'm drilling, just so I don't drill a hole on my table. And I've just got these little hardware screws that usually come with knobs. I just happen to have some in my hardware stash. And I am going to screw that in from the back side. And I did end up, I started using the little wrench socket my husband had given me, but that was just a little too difficult. So I did revert to my drill and just used a flat tip bit on it and just screwed it in that way. So I did have to add a nut and a washer. That way I can screw this knob onto. Okay, so I'm going to take that little template I made of the eyes and I'm just going to trace that onto the board. And I just use one of those. I just end up flipping it over. That way the eyes are at least evenly sized. And then after I get the eyes on there, I realize, oh, I was going to add him some whiskers with these little Chennel stems that I cut. So I go ahead and grab 3 Chennel stems for each side for his whiskers. And then I'm just going to put some hot glue down and put those Chennel stems in there. And I'm going to do this for both sides. And then I'm going to take me some Type Bond Quick and Thick, and I'm going to apply that to the underside of the knob and then just screw that knob into place. And I think this is so cute. If I had like a thicker black wire, I would have probably preferred to have used that, but this works okay. You guys will have to let me know what you think about his whiskers. Then I'm just going to draw his little mouth with pencil. And this is why I use a pencil, because I can erase it. It took me a couple of times to get this one where I was happy with it. I'm just not the best drawer. My hand is too shaky. And once I'm happy with that, I am going to grab me some black paint and a detailed paintbrush. And then I'm just going to go ahead and color in his eyes and then trace over where his mouth is. Then I'm going to grab me some white paint and some of these little stylus tools or dotting tools, whatever you prefer to call it. And I'm just going to put some highlights inside the eyes. And then I decided it needed some eyelashes. And so I'm just going to draw 2 little eyelashes on each eye with my pencil. And then I'm just going to go back over with that black paint. Next, I'm just going to grab me some ribbon. This ribbon came from Hobby Lobby, and I'm just going to make an easy bow. It's not even going to have tails. That's how easy it's going to be. So I'm just going to kind of roll it in a circle, pinch it down the middle, tie it off with some jute twine. And then I'm just going to use some hot glue and glue that right on the top of the board there. And if you'll look there on the back of my ear, oh, I was so upset. I got some black paint on it. I guess it was sitting on my table, and yeah, so much for trying to sell this. I have a little wood button that I had painted purple. It's in the shape of a flower. And I'm just going to go ahead and glue that right in the center, and this project will be done. DIY number 4. All right, so I picked up some of these wood eggs. I got them last year from Hobby Lobby. And for this project, we're just going to need 3 of them. And I am going to go ahead and start by painting all 3 of them in the color Vintage Linen from DIY Paint. And once those are dried, I have got this new paint inlay from IOD from their 2025 spring collection called the Spring Melody. And it's got some beautiful images in here. And it's got this sheet here that's perfect to put on some wood eggs. So I'm going to grab me 3 of these images, and I am going to just grab me 3 bunnies. I'm going to stick with the bunny theme. And when I get those cut out, I'm just going to put some little slits around the image, hoping it will help me since our egg is round. And if you don't have paint inlays, don't stress. You could always use transfers. You could do a stencil and paint on it. This is just something I like to dabble in in. But for these paint inlays, I have to give it a coat of paint, mist my paper, and then start laying that onto my paint. Now, when I did this, I had one image turn out awesome, and then I had to redo the other two images. And well, it's a good thing they're paint, so I can paint right over them. But that's what happened. And instead of showing you this entire oopsies and stuff, I'm just going to go ahead and fast forward to pulling off the paper. And I just took a baby wipe to dampen over that paper. It's supposed to make the paper easier to come off. And then I just start pulling it off. And this was a little hard to do because I put all those slits in the paper. So I don't know. And looky there. Look how pretty that is. And I wanted to make these eggs two-sided, so I grabbed some flowers out of my Rose Botanicals transfer book from IOD, and I just cut off some little flowers and some of the greenery, and then I'm just going to rub those onto the opposite side. All right, so I'm going to grab another one of those large spools. Actually grabbed 3 of them. I did go ahead and stain it in the same stain that I've been using throughout the video, and I'm going to take some Eileen's Tacky Glue, and I'm going to put these eggs on the top of one of those spools, and I let this sit overnight just to make sure it was nice and adhered. And something I did go ahead and do also that I didn't get on camera was where the paint inlay is. You definitely want to seal that so you don't take a chance to reactivate that paint. I went ahead and used a spray sealer from Rust-Oleum and sprayed that down. And then that's going to dry as well. And moving on, I went ahead and I coated the eggs with a clear wax. And then I'm going to take this brown wax from Dixie Belle and I'm going to go over the eggs. And I am so sorry, I am out of frame here. But I just go over those, wipe back any excess. Just want to give them a little bit of an aged look. And now I've got some cotton floss, and I'm just going to grab 2 colors that kind of match those paint inlays I put on there. And I'm just going to wrap a color around each of the spools. I just thought that would give it a little special touch since these are thread spools. So just going to wrap those around, use a little dab of hot glue to glue those in place. I've got a wood button, and I am actually going to take some jute twine and I'm going to thread it through the little buttonholes just to make it look a little bit more finished. And then I'm just going to go ahead and glue that button on the side where the transfer is. And then this project will be complete. And hey, make sure you leave me a comment. Let me know which was your favorite. And if you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button. Also hit that thumbs up button. That way YouTube will spread this video to others who might be interested. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you next Thursday.